Hey everyone, and welcome to Bible 365. We are on Luke 11 today. So coming up in this end of the Luke 11, this part two, we're talking a lot about the Pharisees, what they did, how they they came up against Jesus, and they were trying to tear him down. And Jesus was trying to teach them lessons in order to turn their hearts more towards the Lord, which is exactly what he's always looking for. So stick with me as we read this chapter, and I will see you guys in a minute. Hey, welcome to Bible 365. I am your host, Kathy Carter, and this channel is here to kind of merge Bible living with Bible literacy. So, we are going to be using the New Testament this year in order to understand what it's like to live as a follower of Christ. I have a link below in the description that I have a download that will bring you to a chronological Bible reading of the New Testament. So, what I want you to do is read every day and join me and hopefully some friends as we talk about what it means to live as a kingdom builder. Let's get started. All right, so here we are in Luke 11, part 2. So we're moving on. We dealt with the Lord's Prayer already, and he was kind of like sharing with his disciples what it meant to pray, how they should be praying to the Lord, right? The things they should be lifting up. And then he was explaining who our God is. And then when he comes down here, we're kind of starting in this section in Luke 11:14, and it says he was casting out a demon and it was mute. And then he cast out this demon, and then right away the person was able to speak again. And so these Pharisees, we start to see now the Pharisees start butting up against him. So in his ministry, he has been. I've said this, I think, on a lot of my videos lately, is that his timing is everything, right? And it doesn't mean like I know in 2 weeks this is going to happen, or in 4 weeks this is going to happen, but we slowly watch. Like this is certain special timing. He was young and he was growing up, and then he went through he got baptized, right? So there was timing for him to be baptized, and then after he was baptized he started his miracle. Well, he went into and was tempted by the devil, and then he started his miracles. And we see it like a slow build up, and it was in a small area, and then he started expanding his area, and then he sent people out to kind of shout out like, hey, he's coming. And then Herod heard he was coming, right? So we see all these little like checkpoints along the way. If you're a runner, if you're someone that does races of any kind, or you camp or whatever, there's checkpoints out there, right? And you're like, oh, okay, I'm on the right path, or I'm in the right way. I know exactly what I'm doing, and I know what my next step is going to be. And so it seems like here the Pharisees are sort of like getting to the point. So the Pharisees have ruled the roost for a significant period of time. And it's this delicate balance that they're running in the nation of Israel, right? So Pharisees and Sadducees are on this council. They're not in charge, but they're in charge themselves. So they have just enough power to sort of control the area and nation of Israel, leaving some out, like up in Samaria and stuff like that. But for the most part, they're controlling the hub of Israel, which is definitely in the Jerusalem area where like the temple is. And so they're in control, and they know what they think they know. They understand what they think they understand. And then up pops this guy, says he is the Messiah. Well, he doesn't say it, but other people say that he is the Messiah to come. And then he starts to say it after other people start saying it. And so they're like, he's not doing all the stuff that that we think the Messiah is supposed to do. He's like talking to prostitutes and healing people that don't really deserve it and talking to Samaritans. And he can't be the David that's supposed to come. And you can see they're starting to get frustrated. And then he's butting up against some of the things that they consider traditional law. And he's not breaking the law, but he's not following all the extra laws that they say that they're supposed to be doing. He's going deeper into a lot of those laws, and he's saying it's not about that, it's about this. And so this is where we see him really kind of pushing up against the Pharisees. So the Pharisees are following him around, and at one point he releases a demon, and they're like, you're doing that by the power of Beelzebub. So like a demon, Satan of some kind. And he's like, here we go with his parables again. I can't divide the house. So if I'm releasing demons from the person who's putting demons in there, then our house is divided. And by the way, I think it has two meanings, because I think he's explaining to them that the demonic house would be divided, but he's also saying, if you're saying that, you're dividing our house. Like, right? Like he's dividing their house, because Jesus is trying to show them the truth of what it is. And then they're coming in, they're accusing him, and it's dividing the house. And this for us as like a really important take home is the idea of being divisive in the body of believers. And I want to be very clear because I feel like I've said this a lot. I don't mean you shouldn't confront elders, you shouldn't confront church bodies or church members or anything like that. What I mean is we need to be very careful in the way in which we do it, right? If there's whispering and underground divisiveness, right? Like, oh, can you believe this person did that? Or, oh, where you start like creating factions inside your church. This is not the way to go about it, right? And I'm not going to tell you Matthew 18. I'm not going to do any of that nonsense. But we need to think about the way in which we handle these situations, being the godly ones, even to a point where we go, you know what, we might be the losers in this situation, right? Like might be the ones that need to leave this body, this church body, and we won't win. So, but we need to do that because we need to do that in honoring of the Lord. We go and we're honest and we're open and we don't cause division. And that might mean that we're the ones that got to get out of there. And I know that's really difficult and it's really challenging. But I believe that's calling us. We've been called to a higher purpose, and we just got to be careful about the divisions, right? Like splitting the house in a way, especially for kind of like younger believers who might not know which way to go, and they might go towards like the more charming, charismatic, friendly, witty, right? Like I love that person. I definitely agree with that person. So we just need to be careful with some of those kinds of things because we don't want to divide the body in a bad way. We want to be very careful to be as close to the Lord as possible in all these things. So he's talking about dividing the house. And then he says, and if I release demons by Beelzebub, then how do your people release demons? You can't have the both, right? You can't have the best of both worlds. So you can't have it where like, oh no, we're high and holy, but he does the same exact thing, maybe more than we've ever done, right? But he obviously does it the bad way and we do it the good way. So we need to be careful of what those things mean and how we understand those things. So it says, and then he's talking to them about like where the unclean spirit goes. And I think he's calling the Pharisees the unclean spirit because I've kind of broken this down a whole bunch of different ways. Like, oh, does this mean demons can't cross over water? And it may have some more of depth in those meanings. But I think because it doesn't quite connect unless we understand that he's before and after this section, he's having a deep conversation with and against the Pharisees, like talking about a house divided, right? So even as I'm saying that, he's not being divisive and gossiping with people about it. He's actually confronting the Pharisees head on with their sinful behavior and urging them to change their ways and to follow the Lord. So he says, he who is not with me, so with Jesus, is against me, and he who doesn't gather with me scatters. So he talks about scatters. When the unclean spirit goes out of a man, it passes through these waterless places. And then when it sees like that place is empty, it comes back with more people. And I think this is what the Pharisees are doing. So he kind of like is cleaning certain areas out. And then these Pharisees are going to grow stronger because they're being so divisive with Jesus. They're going to start building people up and then they're actually going to be coming back. And what we see is Jesus does eventually die because of this, right? So they've gained strength. This like evil demonic presence has gained strength and they are able to take out Jesus. As I mean, we know that was part of the plan, but I'm just saying that it's also in their hearts to do that, right? We start to see that they get angry and frustrated and they want to take him out. And it says, while Jesus was saying these things, one of the women in the crowd raised her voice and she says, blessed is the womb that bore you. And so this is another area in which I just wanted to kind of talk about it because he says, so I read the NASB and I wanted to kind of come head on with a situation because she says, blessed is the womb that bore you and that you were the woman that you were nursed by. So she's blessing his mother. Okay. And so he says, on the contrary, and this is in my NASB, on the contrary, blessed are those who hear the word of God and observe it. Now, he says on the contrary in the NASB. There is actually no other book in which he says on the contrary. He actually says something more like, yea, verily, or yea, rather, which is sort of like, yes, and this is the way I view it because I feel like this is the only way it makes sense because we do see blessed is she in the very beginning of Luke. Actually, we see that the angel is like she's blessed because she's carrying the Lord. So I don't want to take away her blessing. And I don't believe that Jesus wants to take that away either. But what he wants to do is put that on an even playing field, right? She's not above those who follow the Lord. So what's important is she's saying blessed, this woman is saying blessed, and he's like, no, no, blessed are all of those that follow the Lord. Blessed are all of those that see and hear. So imagine there's not this level, right? So if you guys listen to Jen and I a few sessions back where she feels like she's in the middle of this mountain, she's kind of like part of the way up and she's trying to pull other people up, and there are other people up above her trying to pull her up. But she said people are kind of maybe like climbing over top of her, and maybe that's what she's supposed to be, where she climbs over top. And I think Jesus is making it clear right here that that is not what he wants. He says we are all lifting each other up, right? Like we are all getting to this playing field where if we listen and we hear and we love the Lord, we are blessed because we are with the Lord. And so the only one who is above those things is Jesus, right? So like there are those who don't follow, those who are blessed follow, listen, and hear. And then Jesus is above all these things. And we're going to see that in the future too, where we see like Peter and Paul, and everyone's like, and I think James and John, and everyone's like, oh, blessed are you. Oh, you're the God. And they say, no, 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 this has nothing to do with me. This power is not my own, but this power is all through the Lord. And so they always give Jesus his due. He's the one that is above everybody else. And then he says, you guys are going to look for a sign because you guys are wicked and you guys are desperately seeking for this sign. And he said, I'm only going to give you the sign of Jonah. Jonah, and there's a couple of things in which he does this. Jonah was in the belly of the whale for 3 days. So Jonah was a prophet back in the Old Testament, hundreds of years before this. Again, I'm going to say Jesus is completely confirming the stories from the Old Testament as truth and understanding. And he's like, I'm going to give you that sign. And that sign is that Jonah was swallowed by a whale for 3 days, and then he was thrown up out of this whale. He survived out of this whale, walked into Nineveh, said, Lord's going to blow up this place. And Nineveh immediately turned and was like ripping their clothes, throwing ashes on, and saying, oh, Lord, please protect us. But if you don't, you are still Lord, right? And the Ninevites were not Israelites. They were not followers of the Lord. So the entire nation turned around. And so he's, in some ways, I'm going to say he's foreshadowing his death that is to come and his resurrection. And what are people going to do? That's going to be the sign. What's it going to look like when he comes back? Are you going to believe when he comes back? Are you going to repent when he comes back? Are you going to turn actually to the Lord and away from your rules and your laws that you're following now? And he says that's the only sign that he's going to give. Then it says, no one after lighting a lamp puts it away in the cellar. So Jesus has come out. He is opened up. And there's, again, other kind of like visual effects about what this lighting the lamp is. But if we go back to Genesis 1, he is the light. He's come. His lamp has been lit. They're all waiting for something else. This is the thing. Don't hide it. Don't try and put it underneath of a blanket. This is the thing that we want to be following and looking at. No one would ever choose to light something and then cover it, right? If you're going to cover it, don't even turn the lights on. Then he says, woe to the Pharisees because of all these things. So the Pharisees are the ones who aren't listening and aren't paying attention. So he said, when he had spoken, a Pharisee asks him to have lunch with him. And he went in, reclined at the table. And when the Pharisee saw it, he said, why don't you clean your hands first? And so Jesus was like, and what I'm going to say is I think Jesus deliberately didn't wash his hands, right? I think were he with, and we see some of this in the future in Paul's letters, were he with other people where it wouldn't have been a stumbling block or an issue or a hard sell or whatever it is that you want to call it, he may have, right? He may have, as a law-abiding, God-loving citizen that would have had all these traditional practices, he may have. I think, this is me. I think not to cause a fight, but to let them know, like, let this be a lesson to you, because you guys are focusing on things that don't matter. How you clean on the outside doesn't matter. This would have been a huge awakening to them, because if you have not, and just kind of like a push from my older videos, if you weren't with me for the Old Testament, I really strongly encourage you to go back and watch like my Leviticus and Deuteronomy videos. They're hard to read, but the entire situation was based on the nation of Israel separating themselves because they were chosen by the Lord. So the Lord picked them up, right? So, like circling this nation of Israel, picked them up, lifted them up out of Egypt, brought them into a land that was not theirs, that was beautiful, this land that had everything, them this land, and then said, you need to behave a certain way, right? And the way that you behave will determine if you are clean or dirty. Those who are clean can be with me. Those who are dirty cannot be with me. So I'm going to give you all of these things that show what is and what isn't clean and dirty. So if you had a certain disease, you were considered dirty. You had to go clean for a certain amount of time before you could come back. If you were a woman menstruating, you were considered dirty. You had to be clean for a certain time and you could come back. If you were an adulterer, you were dirty and you had to go clean before. Maybe you could, but maybe you were permanently gone and you couldn't come back. And so there was a separation. And so then every single thing that they did, understandably so, by the way, I'm not going to say that this wouldn't be understandable, but through their thousands of years from those original moments all the way until 30 AD, it just got more and more and more. Now you need to clean your hands before you sit down. You need to clean your cup before you eat from it. You need to clean your bowl before you sit. And so, and like even thinking that as I'm saying that, I think about how we just kind of went through COVID. And I say just, it was a few years ago, but it's still like, it's either the before time of COVID or the after time of COVID. And thinking about how many people, like how much Purell we have in our schools, in our restaurants, right? And all over, and nobody thinks twice about like, right underneath the thing and soaping up and Purelling. The kids now, kids that shower every day or kids that don't shower every day, Purell constantly, like in between every class, you can see them going up and cleaning off like maybe their pencils or just their hands. And so it's been something that they've been accustomed to. They've been taught for so many years now. And so this would have been the same thing. So I want to say on the outside, I understand what he's telling them. On the outside, I understand, but let me explain to you the truth. It is not what is on the outside. It is you. The outside of your cup is shiny and the pattern is stunning and it's porcelain. And so it's so beautiful and you're so careful with it. And everybody looks at it and goes, wow, I wish I had a cup as amazing as that cup. And then you look at it and it's disgusting on the inside. And how do you know it's disgusting on the inside, you ask? Well, I'm going to tell you, because he follows up with explaining to them what's going on the inside of them. Because they would say, like, they're clean on the inside. What are you saying? I tithe, I do this, I do that, right? And he says in verse 40, he says, you foolish ones, didn't he who made the outside make the inside also? But give that which is within as charity, and then all things are clean for you. But woe to you, because you tithe mint and rue and every kind of garden herb, and yet, so those things are great, but you disregard justice and the love of God. So you're giving up. That's what, so you're inside, because those things we can't see on the outside. We can see you tithing Dylan mint. Ooh, look at him. He's tithing. He even goes down and tithes from the herbs that he grows in his herb garden. Man, he's amazing. But on the inside, it's black and dirty. You wouldn't want to sip from that cup. It's got all kinds of little dog hair in there. Like, oh, it's gross. You wouldn't want to sip from that cup. But you can't see it if you're just looking here and you're not looking on the inside of the cup. And that's what he's telling them to do. And then the lawyers get frustrated and they say to him, teacher, when you say this, you insult us as well. And he's like, well, what are you guys as well? You weigh down men with burdens hard to bear, while you yourselves won't even touch the burdens with one of your fingers. So you are giving burdens to people that you don't have, because they are. So lawyers are part of the, I think for the most part, are part of the like Levite family, the Levite tribe. And so they don't have to tithe on certain things. So they're giving this heavy tithing burden to all of these people that they don't even have to do. Now, one would say that was all established back in the original kingdom, right? When God did this whole thing with Israel and Joshua. So that was established. How is that wrong? But it's in their hearts. Oh, we need to tithe them more money. They need to give more. They need to give more of their property. They need to sacrifice more. They can insult someone and go, oh, you did this? Well, then you need to grease our palms a little bit more. And they are not required to do any of that because they're the ones that feed off of that stuff, right? Like that's how they get their food and they get their pay from what everyone else gives. It's one of the, and I want to say it's an outsider thing, but it's one of the biggest insults that people have about the American church and probably the European church and everything like that too. But the American church for sure is like, all you want to do is take all of our money, right? And you guys are screwing up all the time left and right too, and you're not even compassionate, right? But you just, all you want to do is grease your palms. You'll lie in order for someone to get more money. You'll cheat in order to get more money. You will bend some of the rules in order for the government to give you money, right? Like, so we see all of these things happening, and this is exactly what we're not supposed to be doing as a body of believers and as a church. So this is where I'm ending today, you guys. It's a hard one. It's a hard one to kind of come to terms with, because I think we really need to look in the mirror and understand how we're participating in some of that, and see what that would look like in order to change some of those ways. So be in prayer about these things. And I hope you stuck with me. If this was a blessing, I want you to like, share, and subscribe. And then I will see you guys next time. Keep reading.